Hello and welcome to this short briefing for senior leaders across the Sir John Brunner Foundation, just from three events or three things that I've been looking at over the last week, which I thought would be useful to share, and hopefully share it in this format might be an easier way to do it than reading through the briefing paper, but I will forward the briefing paper as well. So the three things are the Ofsted webinar, which was the autumn update that they delivered and is available online, and there's a link in the paper. The ASCL data conference that I attended yesterday in Manchester, and the secondary accountability measures, the update that was released over the last couple of days for September 2023. There'll be a further one of those in October, so we'll look at that together then. So starting with the Ofsted webinar and the autumn update that they provided. The key takeaways as far as I took it is that it does appear, certainly for the webinar, that there's an understanding of the context schools are working in. They understand that attendance is challenging and that there is an ongoing impact on behaviour. It talked about the fact that schools can't be everything to everyone. One of the questions that the inspection team asked themselves is to what extent have leaders done all they can reasonably expected? Let's start that again. To what extent have leaders done all that can be reasonably expected in the time available and circumstances in which they work? And basically, if leaders are aware and have a clear plan in place, inspectors will judge this favourably. Obviously, the focus on safeguarding remains. That strong culture of safeguarding, an open and positive culture is how they described it. It's designed to protect children from serious harm, and inspectors will look beyond ensuring that schools are meeting the statutory requirements. However, ineffective safeguarding could include things like insufficient action being taken to remedy weaknesses following a serious failure, allegations not handled properly, evidence of serious failures, and poor training in a closed culture. So it's certainly that open and positive culture is key for safeguarding. They've introduced early monitoring visits for those schools where safeguarding is judged ineffective, but it's only minor improvements. Still, obviously, a strong focus on the single central record. They use the Keeping Children Safe in Education to check that. That's the rule book for that. Some general updates were that they are doing a more depersonalised approach to the reports. So rather than saying leaders need to improve, they're now going to be saying the school needs to improve, as an example there. Inspectors will always meet the Chair of Trustees and the CEO or their delegate. The local governing body will be met, but only in addition to the trustees, not instead of. They work with the published data, so they won't work with provisional data, Ofsted inspectors, that is. And again, about attendance being everyone's business. So I think the key takeaway, the key action there is to continue to do everything that is reasonably practical to safeguard students and maximise attendance. Okay, on to the ASCL Data Conference that I attended yesterday in Manchester. The key takeaways from that, so there was somebody there from Ofqual who went through the letter that has been sent to all head teachers. So hopefully the heads have had that letter. Important to read that letter, understand it. I've put a link in the briefing paper so you can find that. It needs to be shared with subject leaders and their teams. And the key parts, as I see it, from that letter are certainly in terms of the student tracking exams and the practice exams in the schools and in the college as well, that do not use the 2022 or 2021 autumn series or the 2022 summer series grade boundaries. Really important to return to 2019 grade boundaries when projecting in terms of those student tracking exams and even those working at exams. Really working at grades. Really important to use the 2019 grade boundaries. Certainly not the 2022. Important part there for the college in terms of UCAS, and again it's to do with predicting grades. Interesting that only 20% of placed students met or exceeded the grades that they were predicted. So again, that strong steer to go back to 2019, so pre-pandemic standards. Really important when doing those UCAS grades. For the VTQs, same approach as 2023 in terms of things like the early issuing of results. to centres, that is. The resilience arrangement. So should exams have to be cancelled again, they're going to continue, and I think it's continuing into the future, this one, that centres do need to think carefully about that. There's some guidance there, and again a link in the briefing paper. But really important that centres are expected to gather evidence of student performance, but only in the normal way. So not kind of planning extra assessments. So the student tracking assessment, the practice exams, make sure that there is a process in terms of keeping hold of those, and just in the unlikely event that those are needed for those resilience arrangement, but certainly not planning a whole extra series. Really important there. Okay, in terms of there was somebody from the DfE at the conference as well who did an update. So some dates there. It's looking like the 5th of October. The checking exercise will continue. The next part, only very, very limited chance of actually changing anything, but schools will get to see their provisional DfE progress 8. So really important to get that, download that, and to share that with me as well, please. And they're looking at the 19th of October. That data, so all the data from there will be published on the website, and Compare the Schools, and it's going to be called Compare the Schools again website. So just be aware that goes out on the 19th of October. In terms of 2024-25 and 2025-26, so the 2025 exam series and the 2026 exams, there's still no confirmation of how Progress 8 will be calculated, or indeed if it will be at all. The DfE are exploring other baselines to use. They did say at the conference that just because they've not done a progress measure at primary level and at 16 to 18, it doesn't mean that they'll just use attainment automatically. They are looking to find an alternative in terms of those baselines to be able to see what progress students have made, but are struggling. So January 2024, apparently we'll find that out. There was then an Ofsted update at the conference, which went through kind of how Ofsted are using data. But the question remains, are pupils developing their knowledge and skills across the curriculum? And as a result, are they achieving well? And there evidence in that by results and the work students are producing. So really, really important that students are producing work that can be evidenced at inspection that shows that their knowledge and skills are improving over time. One slide in particular said inspectors will expect schools to do all they reasonably can to achieve the highest possible attendance, whilst recognising that the context in which schools operate has changed. So similar to that Ofsted briefing there. So the key action there is make sure that we are doing all we reasonably can to achieve the highest attendance. Also interesting that they're looking carefully at have schools got the capacity to improve, and to judge that, what they're looking at is have schools identified the right issues? Are they making timely actions to address the issues? Have schools got the evidence of a track record of being able to improve in terms of that capacity to improve? And finally, have you done everything that can be reasonably expected? So that phrase seemed to be sneaking in there. There's also some interesting things about how schools with high outcomes, so a positive progress 8, can receive an RI or lower, or the opposite, low outcomes but receive good or better. And for example, high outcomes but receiving a lower judgment from Ofsted, so an RI or lower, it could be because schools are teaching to the test in their opinion. It could be a very narrow range of curriculum, poor key stage 3, or some students doing well but others not so. And then the opposite, so those schools with low progress 8 but receive a good or better judgment, could be to do with the fact that the curriculum's changed but it's not had time for the to show impact yet. An atypical cohort, so something unusual about their cohort, or a small school as well, where obviously those outliers can have a bigger impact. Okay, finally, just to finish then, the secondary accountability measures. That document was released, and again the links in the paper there. Still very much pushing the EBAC. So, for example, they're looking at the performance measures for 2024. So, for current year 11, they're going to be looking at the entries into triple science, entries into languages, but they're also looking at changing the how the EBAC average point score is calculated. That'd be for 2025, so current year 10. And what they're trying to do is move the headline EBAC measure, so that average point score measure. They want to move the headline EBAC attainment measure to incentivise schools to have full EBAC entry, is what it says in there. The last part from that is that when on the 19th of October, when those results are published, they're going to return to how the kind of the format or the presentation of pre-pandemic. So the main change there is the return of those coloured bandings. So schools will be judged to be either well below average, average, above average, or well above average. So on that 5-point scale there. Okay, I hope you found that useful. We can discuss it in more detail when we meet next. Thank you very much. Goodbye.